Hello and welcome to Ladies of the PGS. I'm your host, Mmmm. And of course, we have Reina Creole with us today. How are
Hello.
you, Reina?
I am doing great. I am so glad to be here again and so excited about what we're gonna be talking about in the show today. I guess this evening, not this evening by now.
Exactly. You and I have been talking over the past few days back and forth about what we were going to cover tonight. And it does feel like a horror themed show. And I'm so glad that you recommended that we talk about Hellraiser, which has been getting a lot of chatter. But before we talk about Hellraiser tonight, Lorena, I have to talk about this Marvel Disney production of Werewolf by Night. Now, I had to read about it because I didn't know that it is based on a comic. According to the article, I'm reading by this article
hmm
from I can't remember, the Hollywood Reporter had an article about it, um, and in the article they talk about it. Would you be willing to pull that article up for me, Lorena?
Yeah, give
Thank
me a.
you.
You know what? I should have had that. I should have had that ahead of time. That's on
But
me. Let me
the
see.
article is called Marvel's Werewolf by Night Sets the Stage for a Horror Style Avengers Crossover. Now, it is very interesting, and I'm sure a lot of you who are watching were already aware that this comic book existed. And apparently, it has some of the characters that we've seen also appear in other films. But I was completely unaware, Lorena, that we were going to be getting this. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about this special show that's on Disney Plus right now called Werewolves by Night. And, I have to be honest with you, Lorena, we see a lot of different shows out there. They
hmm
advertise so many things to us on Disney Plus. We've gotten a variety of different things, and they have been kind of somewhat inconsistent in their delivery of what we're expecting, especially when it comes to entertainment wise, especially
hmm
when it comes to the things that we're looking for specific characters. And I have to say, honestly, Lorena, watching the show, um, I was quite surprised. And this show is presented in such a way that you can tell they put a lot of time and effort into it. It's a story which I'm guessing, Lorena, is pulled directly from the comics because it sounds like a comic story
hmm
of this character. And and it's just absolutely spectacular. But Lorena, you are no stranger to talking about horror haunts and going to the parks and seeing all of these fantastic presentations. From
hmm
your experiences, have you seen and heard of Werewolf by Night? And what do you think of it from what you've seen so far?
Well, I have never heard of Werewolf by Night. I did not know that it was a comic. And when I read through this and saw that it was, I remembered that there was a certain movie from the 80s based on a comic book, and that movie was called Creepshow.
Yes.
And the kid found the comic with the strange tales, and I'm like, oh well, that makes total and complete sense. It's
Yes.
something that's very different. It is something that has been done before. I had not heard of this. I'd seen it kind of splashed on Disney Plus and said, I'll just go ahead and skip it. But it wasn't until you brought it to my attention and basically said it is like a callback to those classic monster horror type films that I used to love to watch. Back when I was a kid, my parents didn't have cable, so you had like 4 channels. I know I'm dating myself, but you would see these black and white films, and the quality wasn't super super special effects, but the practical effects is what got you, and the way that it could suck you in with the suspense that you would be scared or horrified of a monster that hadn't appeared yet. And I was just really really sucked in by this. You had the crazy premise of basically the head monster hunter, pretty much, he was dead, But in order to make someone worthy to take his spot, guess what? You're gonna have to hunt this monster down. So it's like a battle royale, you know, to kind of hunt that down. I'm like, oh, that's a kind of cool premise. I can kind of deal with that. So between that and we're not doing spoilers, right? Or are we doing spoilers?
I don't think we are. I mean, more or less, what I was going to say is you're right. They took this classic horror genre from the 50s, they
Hmm.
updated it, and
Yes.
you get immersed in this world. You're filled with a remarkable array of characters. It's filmed in, like, I wouldn't say it's sepia, maybe it's sepia or black and white tone that is orchestrated to perfection. And some of the best black and white film scenes I've ever seen. It's remarkable, Lorena.
I would agree. It is right up there when I'm watching it. I'm expecting for Frankenstein to show up, or the Bride of Frankenstein to show up, or we'll go old school. Bela Lugosi as
Yes.
Dracula. I expect him to just come rolling in like, what? And keep going because it's so authentic at a time when horror stories were told in black and white, and it wasn't necessarily about the gore, it was the psychological terror that gets stirred up and then you get sucked in. It's like, you know, you should run but you shouldn't. But it's right up there with the other classic movies, and that's the appeal of this, because you automatically think about those monster movies from the 50s, you know, the 40 20, I will say go back 30s, 40s and
Yeah.
50s when you see this, because the camera technique literally, I may be wrong, but I doubt it, pretty much the same. It looks a little dirty. It doesn't look clean black and white.
Yes.
It just looks like it was pulled, you know, from them. So I like that how would you say it? Like that celluloid feel, so to speak.
Yes. It certainly does. And, there's certain things about it. In addition, first of all, and I know that you and I are kind of verbally describing this to the viewers, we're verbally describing this, but to be honest with you, to anybody who's watching this, when you watch this show, you're going to see so much to look at. There's so many details.
Oh my
This,
gosh.
it's incredible the amount of work they put in just into the surroundings in this show. So much thought went into it. Everything is scaled perfectly. And then, Lorena, I guess I shouldn't have been surprised to find out that the music, the composer is the same person who composed the music to No Way Home. And I think it's in the
Wow.
article. Let me just see if I can pull it up that way. In this article here, can you please pan down just a little bit? I think it says it in here, but if not, it is the same composer, and he, of course, is very well known, obviously.
Search like that. Okay.
Yes. And, why am I bringing this up? I have to tell you all who are watching that part of what sells this whole thing to you is the incredible music in the background. My goodness, Lorena, I haven't heard music like this and a composition like this for something like this in ages. I hope I told you the right thing. But it's so incredible. The music is so convincing, and it's just, you really do feel the passion that he had creating the world. The music is as important as the overall production itself. I mean, it enhances everything. And I
Mm-hmm.
think one of the other things that I wanted to mention is it kind of reminded me, sometimes we do get films like this where they go retro, it's like retro horror.
Yes.
I haven't enjoyed a film like this, or let's say a 1 hour program in a while. The last one that I enjoyed that was like this was a film called In the Shadow of the Vampire. And it's a comedy. It's like a metafiction, I think is what it's called. And the idea with that film, which
Mm-hmm.
stars John Malkovich and a bunch of other famous actors, is that they're filming a Dracula film, but it's the real Dracula who's playing Dracula.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so it looks like it's set in the 1930s. And of course, Dracula is the star, and he is really
Mm-hmm.
Dracula. So, he has an attitude and he's a diva, and it's,
Uh-huh.
just really funny. But there had to be certain aspects to it to make it feel as if it was authentic.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly the idea of, Dracula being, being a ham, being a diva, having that attitude while you're filming him is captured in this. But in Marvel's Werewolf by Night, it's a serious story. It has a little twist of perhaps
It did.
kindness to it, right?
It
But
did.
but I have to say, I think it says here, it says, um, while Sam Raimi's Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness cracked the door open to Marvel Studios' horror,
Mm-hmm.
Michael Giacchino's Werewolf by Night, a 53-minute entry billed as a Marvel special presentation, blows the door off its hinges and fully immerses audiences in a world that has long existed on the fringes, even within the realm of Marvel publishing. And now, 50 years
Hmm.
later, it's happening again on the film and television side. The monsters have come to Marvel. That's right, guys. The monsters have come to Marvel. And I think that here it says they exceed expectations. This is in the Hollywood Reporter article, of course, and creates
Mm-hmm.
a loving ode to Universal and Hammer horror films wrapped up inside action and atmosphere of the Marvel horror comics of the 70s. So, one thing I did want to mention is that there are fighting scenes that are just brutal in in this show. So
Yeah.
if you want to see hardcore fighting, believable fighting, it's in this. Now, Lorraine and I don't want to spoil everything about the series, and I'm sure that there are a lot of you who are watching who are very familiar with Werewolf by Night. But I have to say, when I see this level of production, Lorena, I always, of course, am wondering why we aren't getting this all the time. There are some scenes that just completely have blown me away, when I'm thinking about this show. And
Mm-hmm.
there was the one, which I think you might be able to pull up for us, where we find, yes, that's it. And what's so remarkable about this scene is that during this particular scene, one of the characters is witnessing a transformation. And it's the way that they did the transformation. Lorena, the other day I was talking about how important transformation scenes are in
Mm-hmm.
films, and how, a lot of times in sort of in the 80s, we got a lot of these transformations where you saw the person physically transform. So
Right.
to see somebody's body change. And
Like American Werewolf in London, which is classic how that was done.
exactly. And it's this one doesn't do it, but what we see is just an incredible use of black and white, an incredible use of silhouettes, and also in orders of magnitude. Can you go ahead and please
Let
see
me
what
see.
show
Hold on
it
a
just
second. Let me see. Like you see it there.
that's perfect. Yes, that's perfect. And I think that doing something like this, Lorraine, what did you think of this scene?
First of all, I love this scene because it taps into the psychological of what's going on. You fear what you cannot see. You fear what you hear, but you can't see it. There's something about that that just like sets your it's like it sets your teeth on edge, the hairs on the back of your neck. You see her reacting, and we're like, how bad is it? And you just see the shadow going bigger and bigger and bigger. It's almost, I want to say, like the technique that Spielberg used. No, no, Spielberg. I think it was Spielberg used. Probably gonna get this wrong. Sorry, don't take my nerd card. First Jurassic Park movie. We
Yes.
do not see the T Rex. What do we see? First, we hear this like light thud, and then we look at the little cup of water, and you see a slight ripple, and you see it slightly rippling again, and you're like, "What is that big that could be making that?" And I love this because it's like we want to see what the Wolfman looks like, but it's like, nah, not yet. You're gonna see how afraid she is, and then you're just gonna see these brief, shadows. I love how they drag the tension out like that. That's a great method of storytelling. They did it just enough. They did it so that it wasn't a jump scare, because jump scares can be overused, but they pulled this out so much that by the time you see what he looks like, it's like, oh wow. So that was great. I thought it was a great throwback to the type of effects that were used in the movies that were like this, especially with Universal Monsters. They didn't have a super, super huge, big special effects budget. So they had to use practical effects as much as possible. And this is a prime example of a practical effect.
It certainly is. And, as I said before, there are so many details that the second time I watched it, I realized I'm just going to have to keep watching this until I see everything. And I think for those of you who've read the comics may see certain things on the walls of,
Mm.
of the program that will jump out to you that are significant in this story. But this beautiful perspective, these beautiful perspectives here in this transformation scene, and also some incredible perspectives in some of the fighting scenes. I just think that it was absolute artistry. Whoever did this loves this genre.
Yes.
They really have taken it to a point of, just being so enjoyable to listen to watch. It really is unbelievable. They're saying it's an action adventure fantasy horror superhero show, and of course it's directed by Michael Giacchino. I was looking for the composer of it. Maybe somebody
Mhm.
knows, but I was just so impressed by the production of this, Lorena. This must have taken them a long time. 1 hour. This was like a movie with how much was
Mhm.
in it. There was no real downtime, and you really had to kind of pay attention to what was going on by the surprises in it. I
Can I
think
mention something about the score? Um, the music, I love that. When you go back and you watch, those 30s, 40s, especially Universal Monsters, when you heard a certain part of the music play, you knew the monster was coming. That was like as much a part of the film as the film itself, as just enjoying the score, because you just get wrapped up in just how dramatic a scene is, how sad a scene is, how scary, you know, a scene is. So the music is always definitely part of those types of films. So I'm glad they paid as much attention as they did to it in this.
absolutely, and I have kind of found that Giacchino also scored the special edition. In
Oh.
addition, yes, he scored the special in addition to directing it. Wrote the theme for the special prior to filming, allowing him to modify it during the process. He would present musical episodes during the meeting in
Mhm.
production or ahead of filming to help convey the tone he was
Ah.
envisioning for what was to be discussed, and it allowed him to
Mm.
present new ideas at the moment, which certainly I'm sure it's actually been released, the score, a few weeks ago. But honestly, the music is just so captivating in this. I think this is maybe one of the best things that Disney has made this year. I really am captivated by it. My mother watched it with me, and I asked her what she thought about it, and she said it was fantastic. Just seeing this genre kind of come alive again. I like throwbacks like this. I think that there's a lot to be explored in it. I think it was
Mhm.
it was dark like a horror story should be, but it was also another world that we got to go into. Their world, this world of darkness, of creatures from that world. We really
Mhm.
were kind of let in here, and I think that the story was also very clever. So um,
Yes.
there's there's a special object that's involved in the story,
Mhm.
and there's a challenge. It really was done so well. I have to give them credit. I have to give them credit for something that was just so captivating. And I love this still that you have right there. That's part of the excitement, Lorena, is seeing face expressions like this, where she is terrified. I mean,
That's the classic hallmark of those horror movies when that's where they got the scream queens from, where you see them and they're just like freaking out. That's something classical from that movie. Absolute those types of movies. Absolute throwback having something like this. And you're right to be able to see her face and how terrified she is. And if she's terrified now, we haven't even seen this creature yet. what happens when we finally see, what it is.
Absolutely. And I do also want to give credit to the actors that they chose for the roles. Who I recognized a lot of them here, and I'm sure you have too. Let me just look at the casting. Says that it's Gail Garcia Bernal as
Hmm.
Jack Russell, who plays a
Hmm.
werewolf. Laura Donnelly, I've seen her in quite a few shows as Elsa Bloodstone, who we are looking at right now. That is Laura Donnelly right there in our paused photo, paused video there.
Hmm.
And Harriet Hanson Harris as Verussa Bloodstone, who's her stepmother in the story. So certainly we do see some other creatures. I'm not going to say what they are, but
Yeah, because you need to get this put this way. Even if you've, I guess, read the comic, I don't want to spoil it, especially if you've never seen it. You don't want to get spoiled because when I saw it, I'm just like, wow, that's a good job.
now, Lorena, do you think we'll ever see something like this in the parks?
In the Disney parks, mm, Disney parks, I would be surprised if they do, just because right now Disney is more focused on like the Avengers type of thing and those characters. This is kind of like a one-off. So if they did do it, I would see them bringing it back, like say for the Halloween season, possibly. The only people who would absolutely bring something like this because they're known for the genre would be Universal. So if you are a fan of the Universal parks and you know about Epic Universe being built, there is a Universal Monsters Mansion attraction that is being built right now, and it's probably got a lot of this type of stuff in it. I can't wait to find out more about it.
Yeah, and I hope you share that information with us. Since I did,
Absolutely.
I feel like I put you on the spot there, but I knew that you would know, guys. As you know, Lorena covers all the lowdown from the parks in Florida, and not just in Florida, but probably in the U.S. So it's good to kind of ask you these things because I immediately would
Mhm.
think of an attraction that anybody would love to see something like this. It certainly does feel very scary. And, we want to have that experience when we go to something that's supposed to be. So
Mm.
this to me just feels
I'm sorry,
perfect.
just kind of popped in my head. The only thing closest to this in the Disney parks right now, and it'd be funny if they did this as a crossover, would be the Tower of Terror attraction, because that
Yes.
is based on the Twilight Zone, and it's kind of
Yes.
like that same time period, actually.
Okay. Well, it is something to think about. I have to say that I'm going to probably watch this 3 or 4 times before Halloween.
Yeah, because I missed stuff in this, and I kept skipping back because I kept missing stuff, and I was mad that I was missing stuff because I was like, I need to find out what happened. So yeah, this is definitely a second watch. Probably going to be a third one, too. There was just so much to see and so much, to enjoy in this. It was a good time.
It is, and I'm going to put it on my list of, going forward, on my list of things to watch for the holiday, Halloween season, guys. I certainly did enjoy this. I recommend it to anybody out there who is a little leery. Don't worry, you are not going to be disappointed in this, guys. It certainly is an amazing, amazing presentation from Disney going forward. So there was that. And of course, Lorena, we get to talk about the next topic that also has had a lot of chatter, and it is the new Hellraiser film, Lorena, that I also did not know what to expect when it came out. It is a reboot, and of course,
Mhm.
there is concern about that. Hellraiser is a franchise which many of you watching right now already know started in the 1980s, and there have
Mhm.
been quite a few sequel films of Hellraiser out there. I'm just going to add that here. Thank you very much,
Mhm.
Lorena,
You're
for
welcome.
helping.
You're
Um,
welcome.
some of which I wasn't, some of which are touch and go, right?
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
know, But I had no choice. I absolutely had to watch this new Hellraiser film for many reasons. I mean, it's been ages. I do love
Mm-hmm.
the idea of Hellraiser, but I was curious, and I'm sure just like many of you guys out there, what this new Hellraiser film would be like. And certainly this CBR article is giving us a clue that the reboot is nothing like the original, and that is actually a good thing. But obviously we know, Lorena, when we watch a Hellraiser film that we're going to
Mm-hmm.
see, and we can clearly see in the picture these Cenobite creatures. We knew that.
Mm-hmm.
So that was not something that would be surprising us. But in the past, we've gotten the Cenobites, and we haven't exactly had that story that grabs us necessarily, that makes us invested, makes us care about the characters, and makes us wonder what's going to happen, because they had some really nice details in here that made us want to watch more. And of course, we know we're going to see gory moments. This is Hellraiser, guys. This is not a spoiler. We knew that when we decided we were going to watch a Hellraiser movie, that there would be something like that. So my
Mm-hmm.
question really is, Lorena, in your opinion, and I've seen the film, I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the story. What did you think about the story? We're not going to give spoilers, but what did you think about the story with this new Hellraiser reboot?
Hmm. Well, to preface it a little bit, I did enjoy the first Hellraiser movie. I saw it several years after it came out, but was sucked in by the story. I nicknamed Hellraiser "Where's Uncle Frank?" because that's pretty much the premise of Hellraiser. Where's Uncle Frank? I liked Hellraiser too. Both of those were great watches. The ones after that, not so much. So I kind of dropped out of that. So when I heard that there was a reboot going on, I'm like, okay, well, how how is this going to work? Because the original was so iconic. It's like, how are you going to come up with a reboot that has enough callbacks to the original, but enough of a story that it can stand on its own? So the way the story started out, I was very intrigued because it's a very, very real situation. Let's say, not to spoil it, but if you've seen the original Hellraiser, because I'm going to spoil that because that was years ago, the pain that Uncle Frank had to deal with is a type of pain that the protagonist has to deal with. Now, with the original Hellraiser, and I'm probably echoing some things in the article, it was about the box. It was about the box, the shiny thing. It was about the box. In the reboot, the focus is on the pain, and the box is kind of under the surface to really, really push that pain. So that's what I thought of the story. Did I think that it was a knock it out the park story? No, but there was enough in it and that I didn't feel insulted, that it wasn't like a page for page redo of the whole thing. I guessed the ending, but I was glad the way that the ending happened. So in that case, I was glad that I guessed right, because for it to go that way is what would have made logical sense and gave enough of the payoff. So I enjoyed watching it. I'm actually planning on watching it again after I go back and actually watch Hellraiser 1 and 2, because I do not acknowledge anything past Hellraiser 2. I kid you not. I think Hellraiser 3, I paid to see that in a theater and I wanted my flipping money back.
Well, it's good that you mentioned that, because a lot of people have this feeling about a lot of the sequels from Hellraiser. And, we have great expectations from it because that first one was so intense and had so many interesting things about it.
Mhm.
Certainly it was, honestly, the 80s, that's so many years ago. It's not going to have quite the same feel. It's set in modern day. So,
Yes.
it's not a retro film or anything like that. And, honestly, I think that they explore some ideas of things that make the story believable. It's
Yes.
not an unbelievable story. It's certainly something that we know would have to be inherent in order for it to be a Hellraiser film. The gore is
Mhm.
still relevant, in my opinion, in this film. I think that some of the things that you see might be a little shocking. They might be horrific. And, for some, I've heard, let's say in some other reviewers say that it's not relevant. And I said, well, I said, for some, it may be, because seeing gore like that, certainly is going to be something that you're not always expecting to see. And they seem to be able to create a million and one ways, Lorena.
That is interesting because and I'll get to the gore in a minute, but in the original Hellraiser movies, where you see the original Pinhead, that freaking hurts. You see some of the Cenobites, especially the Cenobite. I call him the Chatterbox. I think that is actually what his name is, like the Chatterbox. When you
Little
saw
cheeky
the
things, yeah.
effect of what they
Yes.
looked like,
Yes.
that was a certain amount of gore that they went for at the time, because it was more of like a psychological torture story that they had going on. You get to audiences now. When Hellraiser came out, those effects were shocking. They were very shocking to see it, which is why that kind of drew me in. But in this version, it's like, okay, how can you elevate the shock level even more? And that's when they did that with the gore of the Cenobite. So when I say about the type of gore, not to spoil it, but there's a certain Cenobite, and I want to say that she's the head one, with the way that she looks like and the way that well, you've seen it in pictures. The way that they have her skin flayed, there's a reason why it's actually flayed that way. So I can understand that they would need to do that, because this is a different type of pain. Remember, Uncle Frank was an alcoholic in World War One. The generation that drank themselves to death. Remember, he talked about that. Same type of pain in this reboot, but amped up in a different way. So that would call for a different type of gore. So frankly, I really would not want to see the same thing in this reboot. The Pinhead recreation was enough of a callback. You got that part right. So now give me something a little different.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that, we knew we were going to be seeing Cenobites, as I mentioned before. It was not necessary to show us another Pinhead. We saw so many different things in this film that they are
Hmm.
capable of creating that look great. If also terrifying. And it is something to think about. I mean, I think that this type of gore is relevant. And as you mentioned, it has to do with pain. And I think we actually experience it a little different here. This is a different, I guess there are so many forms of pain out there. Oh, and I do want to thank Terrier. Hi, Terrier. For the
Hello.
100 Norwegian kroners. I think it's kroners.
Yes,
Um,
Cronin.
Thank you so much, Terrier. I hope you are well.
Yes, thank
Terrier is a
you.
very good friend of mine. And of course, of all of us, he's a longtime PGS member. Good to
Right.
see you, Terrier. He says, Hellraiser, they upped the gore, but made it feel like a teen scream. Shame. I don't mind the
I
priestess.
did like the priestess.
They just made it like everything post Inferno teen angst. Interesting approach, Terrier. And
You could go ahead.
a few people have said that, and I think that is something that could not be avoided because of the demographic of the characters that they
Yes.
chose. For example, in the original, you had adults who knew what they were doing. She knew that she had been sleeping with her husband's brother, and she found the opportunity to bring him back I have to tell you, that woman is a wicked lady. She
Yes.
knew what
Woo!
fooling around with, and she wasn't going to be satisfied until she got that man back. And so one thing I can say, Lorena, is that while it did have that teen angst, it also had the notion of sacrifice, the revelation of what you can lose, because she that let's just say that it was something that was not apparent and perhaps might be a commentary on the younger generation. What do you think, Lorena?
I would agree. The demographic that they're going for with this, they kind of had to go with that particular demographic, especially within the frame of the story. You weren't going to get, uh, let's say, rusted out 40 or 50-year-old partiers or more, kind of like how it was in the original Hellraiser. With this, you've got like a young adult demographic who hasn't learned how to adult yet, is still doing stupid ass things, and have realized that doing stupid things gives you some pretty horrible consequences in a lot of situations. So I can kind of get that about Scream, although I love the original Scream movie. But yeah, I think it was just a thing with the demographic that they were going for with this. And yes, the priestess freaking rocked. I freaking liked her.
Yes, I think that for one of the first times, this was also a situation where we perhaps were given more information. And of course, that element plays into the story. But I wasn't expecting that. I was just expecting to be shocked all over the place. And then I realized I said, no, I got to pay attention to the clues here.
Yes, very, very much the clues, especially, and I kind of want to talk about the well, we'll say the secondary star. Well, maybe the main star of the movie, which would be the box and how it transforms. I thought that was very cool how they did that. It was no longer a demented Rubik. Well, I guess it is a demented Rubik's cube. But in this movie, they did something different with that. So I really did like that twist that they put on it.
I think it is very relevant that you mentioned that because it did seem quite detached, a detached element in the story. And you're right, it has become more of a character going forward. And even it freaked even me out. And normally I wouldn't be freaked out by that because of the ramifications of it. And I like that they attached something so profound to it. I felt that that was needed because apparently we've only scratched the surface of what is possible in Hellraiser. I think that this film might be an indication there could be, several chapters going forward that have
Mhm,
been unexplored for whatever reason. I think that it's interesting to kind of look at that because a lot of
mhm,
times when we see a film, from what we're told in the film, we're kind of limited into what our imaginations can provide us. But now I feel like they've opened up a whole nother area that is absolutely fascinating. Um, so
yeah.
for me, I feel like that's also could possibly reinvigorate it. Um, and also, the other thing that I was going to say is that it's not easy to go ahead and present this film as something exciting to viewers who do have great expectations. I think overall, the production wise and the acting was fantastic.
Mhm. It was enough to draw me in, especially the actor who portrayed, Voight. He had that haughty, attitude of I've gotten everything and now I want this thing which I think is going to bring me eternal bliss or whatever. He was very believable as that character. The only, I guess, nit that I would have is the main protagonist. I'm forgetting her name. She looked a little too dirty.
Riley, what's her name?
I think it
Riley?
was Riley. I don't know. It didn't seem like realistic grunge to me. I mean, we've worked in cities before. I've worked in like Center City. I've seen like real drug addicts and crackheads, and she just it didn't look realistic. It just kind of looked a little dirty. So that's a minor nit. But I did like her acting.
I think she's a great actress. I think that perhaps she looked a little too healthy, but um, I don't want to say any more about it because I don't want to give too much of it
Hmm.
away.
Yeah.
Um, and certainly, we've seen some of the themes in this film
Hmm.
in like day to day. So this is also something that I really loved about it was that they weren't afraid to go there in the
Yes.
film, and I was not expecting, I don't know why I wasn't expecting this as a storyline, but I was not expecting it. So that was nice. So I was surprised.
Hmm.
I think that it might even, it might also be a reflection on, let's say overall ignorance of the generation too. So, um,
I would have to agree with that. Kind of like thinking that you can get something for nothing.
yes,
That you can get something for nothing. You can do things without thinking you can do things without consequences. So
absolutely.
I really did like that, which again is why I appreciated how I appreciated the way that it ended the way that it did, especially when you hear a certain classic line and it's just like, yeah, this is not going to end well for you, is it? It's just profound how that just hearing that line and seeing what went forward with that. But I do believe that again, this kind of is for that kind of teen young adult demographic to kind of give a very hard lesson of you can't get something for nothing. There are very real consequences to screwed up behavior, and to some people the world is not enough, and that can leave you open to exploitation. Because also when I think about the original Hellraiser movie, it's like Frank wanted that pain to go away and was just willing to do anything to make that go away. So the question is, if you do that, what are you going to have to pay in return? And just all of that, it's simple yet complicated, but I think that's one of the reasons why I like the Hellraiser series so much. It's like people who are willing to see that shiny box. I want what's in that box. That magic box is going to take the sadness away, the loneliness away, the alcoholism away, I don't have to live in reality anymore. It's just going to take this gift that the Cenobites gave me, and my life is going to be great until it pulls your skin off.
Yeah, those Cenobites, let me tell you, I don't want to cross a path with one ever. So the fact that I can say that now, I certainly do think that the film overall and its themes of these characters have left an impression on me. One of the characters that you were talking about, it's Goran, is it Vishnik? I couldn't pronounce his last name, but he
Mhm.
plays one of the characters in the story. And I thought he had sort of like a seductive quality about him,
Was that
you
Voight?
know. Yes, he played the
Yes.
Voight
Yes,
character.
he did. And that's very yeah, I don't want to do spoilers, but yes, he played it very seductively. And even with Pinhead's voice, how he talks, and even how this Pinhead talks, it's a very seductive cadence. So that actor who played Boyd, I thought he did that. He played that part very well because he needed to be that way.
Yes. The woman who plays that lead Cenobite, I think people had kind of wondered about her as an actress because she has been actually in a lot of roles. But I wonder if that's her under the makeup which I'm guessing it
Oh,
is.
the new, yeah, the female Pinhead,
Yes, the female.
which I can't really say female because it's interesting because it seemed like the voice switched between male. Maybe it's just me,
It's not just
but it
you.
seemed like the voice would switch from a male voice to a female voice and back, which made it really, really flippin' eerie.
Yeah, it's very interesting you should say that. I believe that the woman's name is what is her name? I had it in front of me a few
I'm
seconds
blanking
ago.
on her name.
Me too. But that's okay. Um, what I was going to say is that I believe that the woman who plays that role, is transgender,
Yes, 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 she is.
and I
I do
saw
remember
her
that.
in a show that I liked a lot called Sense Eight, and she played
Hmm.
the story with Sense Eight. I think it was a Netflix show
Hmm.
where everybody could sense each other's pleasures, so to speak. So it was a
Hmm.
group of 8 people. So whenever somebody was having sex, you could have that sensation because you could sense it. And I'm like,
Oh.
this is fantastic. I'm like, we need this, you know. But she played in one of the characters in the story. She was fabulous in it, and she got cast as the lead Cenobite, whose name
Hmm.
I can't seem to get because I'm.
Should be
It's a,
Pinhead.
yeah, it says Pinhead,
Hmm.
Hell Priest, but I see the man and not the lady there. So yeah, it should be Pinhead. Um, okay, that's okay. But what I was going to say is that she did an excellent job. And, I kept hearing her voice and I said, I recognize that voice from Sense 8.
Hmm.
But she was very menacing. I was afraid of her. Yeah. So overall, I have to say that this film is a fun watch. And I know that there's going to be something about the film that may not necessarily jive with everyone, but I think this was an excellent effort for a franchise that is not new, for a
Hmm.
franchise that a lot of people would say is kind of played out and, they've gone in every direction. I think this one's a fresh direction. And I think that it's worth a watch. I think it's something that you can watch and kind of like say, okay, this is cool. I understand it. So I would recommend it.
I would definitely recommend giving it a watch. It is definitely better than Hellraiser 3. Good lord. But that aside, I'll say right up front, if you are squicked out by lots of blood, uh, just keep that in mind when you watch this. Let's say the blood spatter that you didn't see in the original Hellraiser because they couldn't do that particular effect when the chains came out. Yeah, they've kind of perfected that with this one. So,
Yes. And I finally did find, this is awful, but this is her.
oh, okay, okay, yeah,
Her name
yeah,
is it say Jamie Clayton or something like that?
Jamie Clayton. Yeah,
Yeah.
she played it very, very well. It's
Yeah.
like it was Pinhead, but not Pinhead. Instead of a man there with a static box, you have a female figure that also has the box, and how the voice would switch between male and female to kind of throw you off. I thought she did a very, very good job. Very believable and menacing
Absolutely. She's
Pinhead.
a great actress. I think that I'd like to see her in more things. It doesn't have to be horror, but I think that she rocks in a horror genre. I
Hmm.
think that she can hold
Yeah,
and kind of
yeah.
maintain that
Hmm.
for sure. So for me, I felt like this film was great. I probably will watch it again.
Yeah, like I said, I have to go back and watch Hellraiser 1 and 2, and then go and watch this. Oh, it is available on Hulu exclusively on Hulu.
Hellraiser, this Hellraiser, right?
Yes, the Hellraiser reboot is on Hulu.
Okay, excellent. So certainly, guys, if you have Hulu, check it out. It is worth a watch. It's 2 hours long, so it's got a lot in it. I don't really feel like there's any downtime in it, and it has all those things that you would expect in Hellraiser. So Do check it out. Now, the next thing that I wanted to talk to you about, Lorena, and we don't really have a lot of time to talk about it because,
Mm-hmm.
as I thought, we would be saying a lot about Werewolves by Night and a lot about Hellraiser because they are both so compelling.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, two things that I didn't think we were going to be getting at this level, at this stage in the game, is about Sitges, which is the film festival that takes place in Catalonia. And I think they just wrapped up on the 16th, which was yesterday. And they tend to cover films of horror. So there were quite a few films that came out that they did cover or, were talking about that had won awards. And
Mm-hmm.
there was a lot that they talked about. They talked about how they were trying to focus on bringing in new people to do horror. They were saying that the horror genre in general is
Mm-hmm.
expanding, and they're happy that it is expanding. They want people to continue thinking about what horror means, I guess in our modern world. And I think that the Hellraiser film would be a perfect example of that for me. I think that it makes sense in today's world, but I'm not quite sure whether it would make sense in 1988 when the original Hellraiser was made. But it says that they had sold overall, the festival sold over 70,000 tickets, and it was
Mm-hmm.
an increase. It was also their biggest figure ever, so that was great. And the other thing that I was going to say is that they're focusing on it's a woman genre world, at least more
Hmm.
than the past. So there are quite a few films that focused on women, which was great. There was one film in particular called Piggy that had a combination feel of a cross between Carrie and what's the other one? A mix between Carrie and why can't I read this? I have to push it away from me a little bit more. Um,
Carrie is classic. Whew.
Yes. And it's supposed to be a combination of Carrie and one other film, but they said it's a formidable terror debut, drawing its terror from the same well of adolescent female insecurity before going on its grisly way. So both directed by women, Piggy and another film called Husera. And so I think that was kind of interesting that they are kind of featuring these films. There's a
Mm-hmm.
film that I also wanted to mention, and I hope I can find it, about a witch. Now I love films where somebody is accused of being a witch. That's like I start to get tingles all over. It's called Night Siren. And what
Mm-hmm.
happens is this woman goes back to her village, and when she gets there, like everybody, I guess, is either haunted by her or all sorts of crazy stuff happen, and then they're accusing her of being a witch. And I love stuff like that because it's so insane and crazy. The last
Mm-hmm.
thing that I was going to mention, there's one more thing, and it was right in front of me. And can I find it? Oh, yes. The one film that won big at Sitges is a film called Sisu. And I think it's a World War II film.
Hmm.
Um, and in that particular film, it's about a one person fighting off, the enemy, but hundreds of enemies. And it's categorized as a horror film. I thought to myself, I don't really see a lot of horror films about war necessarily. So I don't think it premiered at Sitges, but it premiered at
Mm-hmm.
a number of film festivals before. And I certainly do want to say that I am eager to check it out. So guys, if you get a chance, go ahead and find out what Sitges has awarded to these different films, which I have a feeling will be coming to some of the streaming services for sure over the next few
Hmm.
months. And of course, if I do see any of these, Lorena, I will be certain to let you know what I thought about that Night Siren. That really, I'm like, yes, what is she going to do to people? It's, just, it makes me excited. So are there any other films that you have been seeing recently, Lorena, during this Halloween season that you can't live without?
Let's see. Classic things to view
Mhm.
or
Whatever you love that you can't live without recently, maybe even.
well, recently, I'll tell you, recently, I can't believe I'm late on the train with this, but it was on Paramount Plus, and I needed no, Peacock Plus because I needed a palate cleanser after Halloween ends. God, that movie sucked. goodness gracious, just no, 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 no. You want to know the gist of Halloween ends? Grab fear by the boobs. That is pretty much Halloween ends in a nutshell. I freaking kid you not. But anyway,
Yes.
palate cleanser for that. The Black Phone.
Oh, yes. Yes.
That movie, from the way it's shot, that makes you feel like you're in the late 70s, early 80s. The whole thing about, about the grabber, how, there's this phone in the basement. And this is from the trailer, and this is from the description, where the phone, this kid can actually talk to the victims, the dead victims of the serial killer that has him trapped in the basement. I, I I'm like, how the heck does this work? And the way that they ratcheted it up, it was insane. I mean, all the clues were right there in front of my face, but the way that they did it, it's by the end, if you didn't figure out, they're like, oh my God, how could I freaking have missed that? So I need to go back and watch that again. I know Chris Gore had told me about the Black Phone, and I was like, I'll just wait, whatever. So it's on Peacock Plus, the Black Phone, definitely. Another one is, we're all by phones here, Mr. Harrigan's Phone, which is based on a short story by Stephen King. I have my issues with Stephen King. I don't think he's as good as he used to be after it. But Mr. Harrigan, so this young boy befriends this rich guy in town, and this rich guy pays him every week, I think about twice a week, to come by and read classic novels to him. So he's reading things like War and Peace. He's reading They Shoot Horses, Don't They? He's like reading all of these classical books, and Mr. Harrigan's like talking to him, and there's this exchange. He gets this iPhone. The kid gets this iPhone. He's like in his teens or whatever. He buys an iPhone for Mr. Harrigan. And it's interesting how he gets into the phone. Well, basically, Mr. Harrigan winds up dying. He's buried with his phone. Guess who's getting calls from Mr. Harrigan?
Oh my God, I love it. I love it. I love it. Oh my God, I
It
love
is, it is, it is really good. The ending, I kind of felt that they rushed the ending, but the premise is like, if you've ever seen the anime Death Note,
that. Hmm.
keep that in mind when you watch that. So that's Mr. Harrigan's Phone, and a really, really out of the way freaky one, again on Netflix, and I think it's a foreign film called Old Ones. And
Mm.
basically, there's this town where these old people start just all of a sudden start killing people.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's crazy. They're just like in a nursing home, and they're just like killing people. And they're trying to figure out why. Why is that going on? So that's another one. And of course, the classics: Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street,
Mhm.
and The Ring,
I love
and The
all
Conjuring.
those. Oh, yes. I love all those. I always have to watch The Dead Zone, even though it's like a bazillion years old,
Mm.
as well as what's that other one that I like to watch? Some anime like the Train to it's Soul Station, actually,
Oh
uh,
yeah,
which is the animated preview to Train to Busan.
Train to Busan is so
Um,
good.
Yeah. So those are some that I love watching. I always have to watch The Dead Zone because it feels very New England ish.
Hmm.
And I'm like, the murders have to take place in New England
Oh
in the
yeah, of course.
fall, and then during the winter. Something has to be going on wrong, but it has a little bit more. But Lorena, thank you for joining me tonight on the broadcast. Lorena, where can people find you?
Well, folks, you can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Instagram. And of course, you can find me on YouTube, where I do live streams, several with video uploads just finally finished. reviewing She-Hulk. Go and watch that. And of course, I love popping on here on this channel. And yeah, that's where you can find me. And as always, thank you so much for having me here. It's just always a great time. And thanks to you guys for being here to check out the show.
Well, you are always welcome, Lorena, and thank you for coming on to the program. And guys, you can find me here on the Post-Geek Singularity, of course, on this show, on Midnight Musings. And of course, you can find me on my channel, Positive Fandom, for my live show Sunday brunch at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for all the parlay in the fandoms. And of course, streaming with Lorena and the 1/6 scale man, aka Lael, on Say What or Uncivilized Scandals, and on Midnight's Edge. So guys, please check out and subscribe to Lorena's channel. I think Tom has just put it here so that you have it. Guys, also subscribe to Positive Fandom. Certainly do check out the channels, everybody. Thank you all for tuning in. And of course, we'll be back next week for another episode of Ladies of the PGS. I hope you are all well out there. For Tom Jr. Jackson, we are all goof people. Thank you for moderating. And for any other moderators, I think I saw Louise Sparrow in there and S Beam, who are also moderators. Just want to thank you all for the support. And everybody, I hope you all out there have a great week. And always remember, no matter where you are, always remember to please be kind, guys. Take care.
Bye.